Ay, Diyos ko po. Ay, okay. So let's just see.
Yeah, earlier I visited Eliza's booth, and it was like within like the first half hour or something.
Okay, here we
Sale,
are. All
sale.
right, so our stream is now up. Welcome to this talk. Hi. Okay, so first things first, let's introduce our panelists. Okay, so the talk is called, our panel's called Let's Talk Shop from Crafting Hobby to a Geeky Business. And we are now with two wonderful people. The first, with her work at Nerdy Chipmunk, we have Andie Luke. I hope I'm pronouncing your name, Andie, correctly,
Yep.
who is also moderator of the CaLa Discord server, a server that talks about TTRPG commissions for Southeast Asia. And we have Natural 20 Gaming Goods Dicesmith, Eliza from the Philippines. And they're going to share their experience, tips, and tricks, their challenges that they faced, and how they want to uplift our community through their crafting. I am Mahar, and I am going to be the moderator for this panel. So a few things. Number one, Eliza has said that in case that she has a sound issue because of internet issues, she's going to refresh. She doesn't hate us. She just has to come back and make sure that the sound comes back with her. Secondly, if we're eating, it's a late lunch for many of us. So if you enjoy ASMR, go right ahead. Third, my function here is basically at the request of Andie and Eliza to make sure that we stay on topic and within time. So we should end by 4 p.m. and enjoy the rest of the con, enjoy this talk. And with that, I am going to give it to the wonderful Andie and Eliza, who are going to tell us who they are.
Woo! Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share and let me know if you see my um oh my god, fourth dimension and then opening up the PowerPoint. Full screen. Okay, guys, can you give me feedback if
Works
the
completely
full
fine.
screen works?
Works.
Okay. Does it work?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll start off with explaining or introducing you guys to who we are. Behind the super serious faces, take it or leave it, of Andie and Eliza, we have lots to say about our life, especially in the business sphere. And not all business persons are actually like graduates of business. So you'll see that Andie and I are totally like finished different courses or work at different professions, even though we're maintaining our own businesses. So let's start with Andie. Tell us more about the nerdy chipmunk.
All right.
Oh,
So as mentioned earlier, I run a server for a streamlined centralized server for TRPG creators across ASEAN. Um, and I started doing crochet. I started picking up crochet again. Well, end of 2019. Started making dice packs, little dice packs like this. And I posted it on the local servers, and people started asking, "Hey, do you take commissions?" And some people have specific requirements. Hey, can you make a dice tray with compartments? And I started designing that, and that's how I ended up here, basically. I also do. Oh, this one I love. So, I welcome challenges. So one client approached me asking, "Hey, can you make a Ghibli inspired, dice bag?" And originally he wanted the cat bus, and I was like, that I don't think that's gonna work. So I suggested to him, how about Amigurumi Totoro that is modded so it opens up as a dice bag, but it's still a plushie. So if you squeeze actually I have it right here.
is there a picture of it?
Yeah, I actually have it live here. So if you squeeze it, it's still an amigurumi. It's still squishable, but it opens up as a dice bag. And the plan is to make a dice tray shaped like Totoro's leaf. So it's a one set dice tray with the leaf later on. But yeah, that's what I do. I also those are my dice spec. These
Mhm.
are original designs. I almost tried scrolling and I realized I don't have the PowerPoint.
It's okay. It's okay.
So those are that one is the prototype of the dice spec that I made. It opens up as a dice tray and it's septagonal. So if you when you roll your dice and you have those unused dice, you can put it into each sided dice. So all the sixes, all the fours. Um, I always have trouble sorting while playing games, so that's the function. That's the prototype. The other ones should be. Oh, these are other works that I've done. Some for my nephews and nieces. The one on the right, that cloak thingy, that was for a cousin who was planning to cosplay as the Hollow Knight. So I that was an original design. The strands so it doesn't tangle. We made it that way. And it also doubles as a blanket when not cosplaying. But that's about it. Um,
Oh, Andy,
yeah.
we forgot about the most important part about your business, which is you. So,
Oh.
like, tell us more about what you do in real life outside of the fantastical world of crafting.
And then somebody drops from the ceiling. um, I have been a writer, editor, translator for the past 14 years as a freelancer. I'm actually going to start a full time job as a corporate communication manager on Monday. Woo! Thank you.
Congratulations! I wouldn't be hearing everyone clap, but I hope that everyone is clapping. Yay! Go get that bread, sis.
Yeah, thank you. But the experience of being a freelancer for the past 14 years have definitely helped me run this business, and in particular in pricing, which we talked about in our chat the other day. But I will mention that later on. But that's what I do for a living.
Okay.
Oh,
So shall I proceed to
yes,
mine?
please.
Okay.
Thank you for the PowerPoint.
So thank you. So about Natural 20 Gaming Goods. Hi, I'm Eliza. People know me as the Dicesmith or the uh dice porn dealer. That's been a thing that people have been saying, oh, dice porn. I mean, to be fair, it is addicting. Like sometimes people say dice are drugs. So I am the dice dealer for addicting dice. So here's some of my work. Um, I'll give you like 5 seconds to stare at them and drool, and wipe off the drool from your mouth. It's fine. Sometimes I drool at them and stare at them as well. So these are custom sets. Most of these people just come up to me, give me like a Pinterest board, and then I collaborate and negotiate with them the designs that they want. So basically, what Natural Twenties turned into is basically we're just we just function as a tool to make your dreams a reality, in terms of dice. Okay. Oh no. Chaos. Okay. So I just wanted to highlight a very important part of my presence here in the con. Um, 2 years ago, I started with GNG. Ever since, I've always been in GNG cons. And would you believe that this is the 1 year anniversary of one of their events? What is the Mahar? What is the January event in 2019? Keep rolling, right? It's keep rolling. And on Facebook, actually, it gives me like a review of my memories. And would you believe it? This time in 2019, people pre-ordered 73 sets for me in that from me in that event. So I'm celebrating this anniversary of being with gamers and GMs, by giving back to the community and to the designers who I've come to love and cherish and gush with about gaming things, about dice things. So people know me for this collaboration with game designers. So with 15 game designers all over the world, in the US, in Hong Kong, in Malaysia, in Singapore, and in the Philippines, of course, we picked out their brand or their games that some of them are releasing today. And I made dice inspired by their games. So if you want to check out those collaborated sets, ask me for a link for my site or go to my booth and chat with me later. Um, yeah, I'll talk about that later on. So this is what also I've been working out as something unique to Natural 20. I also was a painter in my youth, but so I wanted to carry that into dice making. So right now I am working on painting on dice and just making general dice board. So I also do 3D modeling. So what I've been developing right now is making little landscapes in dice, hand painting them. So I literally had to learn 3D modeling just for this, and then encase them in dice. I also make random geeky requests, like I want an Izet guitar knob. So okay, sure, if my design skills can do it, I'll make it for you. Oh, and apparently that is my last slide. And of course, I forgot to talk about myself. Hi, I'm Eliza. I'm from the Philippines. I'm a registered nurse. I used to work in research and development. And right now, I'm doing a career change, and I want to be a psychologist. I want to be a registered psychologist with my own therapeutic gaming clinic in the future. So one of my bigger passions in the long term is therapeutic gaming as a therapist. So right now, while being a full-time student for that, Natural 20 is my bread and butter. And thank you for being on this ride with me. So that is it for my introduction. I'll stop sharing now.
Okay, so this is where I think I'm going to come in and help you through your everyone. They have a voluminous list of what they want to cover, and I'm here to help them hopefully shepherd through the topics. I'm so glad we know you now. So here we have the thing. So uh, these two individuals are quite responsible for, I think, for bringing crafting into our sites. So many people have since, I think, in their lead, started producing their own dice sets, their own products. And the niches are not so specific that they don't welcome other people there. Dare I say, I think they're more than welcome. They're more than open to competition. So, and not that we're here competing, we're actually all very supportive of each other. So the first one is the idea. So maybe Andie, you can tell us what starting the business from a hobby means to you, as opposed to what it means to start a hobby from a business. So what does it mean to start the business from a hobby?
I think it's the fact that it started from doing what I love. It was just me sharing what I made to the local servers. It's like, hey, you know, like just showing it and sharing the excitement of, hey, I figured out how to make the compartments for a dice tray, which doubles as a dice bag. It's little things like that where you try to solve a particular design issue, things that you want to find in stores or other merchants or artists, and you couldn't find it, and so you make it yourself. And knowing you found a solution and sharing it with other people, I think for me that's what it meant hobby into a business. I wasn't looking into running a business from the start. It just happened organically with people starting to ask, hey, can you do this, can you do that, can I commission or not. And I think there's a sense of freedom in that, because my livelihood is not tied in with my work. So the joy of making it, the joy of accepting like the Totoro challenge, and Eliza's challenge for the Baby Yoda amigurumi. That was exciting. That exchange with the client as well. It feels more like friends, you know, trying to figure things out. It's like, okay, I cannot do it this way, but how about doing it this way? And then the other one saying, hey, can we add this? And you're trying to figure it out. It doesn't feel like a business. It doesn't feel as formal. So there's a lot of joy in that. And again, there's much less pressure because it's I don't my livelihood doesn't depend on it. Unlike Eliza, I believe.
Okay, so actually, Lisa marks here that versus starting the hobby from a business. What does that exactly mean to make a hobby out of a business?
Right. So with what Annie mentioned, first her crocheting business was a hobby at first, right? So with Andy, she already had that going for her as a hobby. She super enjoyed it since she told me from high school, right? And then you just reignited it right now, and you saw that there was earning opportunity with um the crocheting craft. But for me, as I said, I graduated as a nurse. So at that time, like I was working full time as a nurse. I just wanted something um, as an extra kind of income. Because inherently, I feel like I'm that kind of person who needs to work with their hands. That's what I observed with myself. And I am a gamer, and I understand the insatiable thirst for dice for every gamer. And I saw an opportunity with that. And from that need to do something with my hands, to earn some extra income, and at the same time, fulfill that gap of there not being a dice merchant, a handmade dice merchant locally and in Southeast Asia at the time in 2018, I sort of saw that golden opportunity. Hey, I'm gonna be the first dice maker in Southeast Asia, and people are gonna love it, and I'm gonna earn money, and I'm gonna get so busy, and I'm gonna love it. So, and people are gonna be super happy with their dice.
It's
So,
yeah.
Mhm.
so it was like I started I I I developed the idea of dice making first as a business, and then little by little I started enjoying it myself to the point that I was making dice not for money but also for my own inherent dice thirst.
I have a
So
question for that because the thing
yeah.
is, would you say you were both crafters before you did any of this business?
Ah,
I would
that
say
is
yeah.
Mhm. For me, I wasn't necessarily a crafter, but I am crafty, if that
Ah,
makes any
yeah.
sense.
I see the distinction. Yeah.
Okay, how about you, Andy? Would you say you were a crafter before you were a businesswoman,
I
a
would
business
say yeah.
person?
I would say yeah. I tinker a lot. Like Eliza, I really like working with my hands. Like I'm actually fidgeting right now as well. Um,
Same.
yeah.
Like
Um,
I'm fidgeting with this pork bun
yeah.
sachet right here.
So I've always found things to do and to make. It wasn't necessarily just crochet. I would jump in and out of hobbies. I have really wide interests. Which is exhilarating at the same time. Also, it you you have a lot of work in progress. But yeah, I would say yeah, I'm a crafter.
Okay, so here you have someone who starts off, let's make a hobby, and I'm going to go into more of a business spectrum because everyone wants what I have. And then you have Eliza who goes, people want that dice. They're all dragons. Let's add to the horde. And then finally discovers, you know what? I actually like making the dice for making it for its own sake rather than the money I was making from it.
Hmm.
Which leads us to the notion of your brands because here we have Andy with I'm sorry. I'm just thinking chipmunk. Okay, so the nerdy chipmunk. So you have, you know, Andy now saying, okay, well, if we're gonna do this, it's nerdy chipmunk, and then we here have Eliza saying, cool, natural 20 gaming goods. So now, why those names? Like, what's in a name?
That's actually a funny story. My my friends and my siblings have been pushing me ever since I started, making those dice packs and whatever. It's like, or stuff for my nephew and nieces. They're like, you should put it on Instagram. I'm social media challenged. Like I don't have social media, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, later. And one of the issue was the name. I could not figure out the name. And it was session zero that pushed me. Like I literally made the name like 5 minutes before the merchant registration closed. That was yeah. And the name itself, the reason why I picked Nerdy Chipmunk was because I realized originally it was the crochet imp, and I suddenly realized I have so many other interests, nerdy interests, and I have this idea for a DM screen. By saying crochet imp, that's gonna limit my scope. The branding is gonna limit its scope. So I switched to Nerdy Chipmunk. So in the future, if I ever want to venture out to other, nerdy peripherals, the name itself doesn't hinder that that branching out.
So that is a rather deliberate choice on your
It was
end.
yeah, it was a deliberate
Okay.
choice.
And the thing is, I find that your approach is very interesting because it seems again always coming from opposite ends. Because
Yeah.
it seems to me that Eliza had begun with a natural state, and which is why perhaps that's why it became natural 20. Because Eliza, I think you first made the map when you started putting sunflowers and other plants into your resin
Mm-hmm.
base. I think that's when
Mm-hmm.
it was very much like Druidcraft, I think,
Right.
was the set that got people saying, I need this, I want this, and the thirst actually went outside of the Philippines. So so in that case, there was natural 20 then an organic. Ay, fun. Was that an organic way of naming your dice, or were you because
um,
now you don't make things out of just purely natural products?
like how my brain works is that I feel like I'm a very methodical person when I try to develop an idea or a concept. So in terms of naming, I didn't have any preference, but one of my rubrics for choosing a name is what is universalizable in the gaming sphere. So when I say universalizable, what is something that everyone universally understands in the community? And number two, what is easily marketable? So I came up with Natural 20 because I'm sure a lot of us one of our first games was D&D, right? So everyone who went through D&D knows what a natural 20 means, and that means it's a success, it's a critical success. It's a good thing, it's a positive thing. And at the same time, it's quite fortunate that at gaming conventions, when someone plays a game that um, and you roll a natural a 20, the tendency for people is to shout, it's a natural 20. So that is extra marketing for me, and I didn't have to lift a finger, right? And at the same time, natural 20 gaming goods is like it's like for everyone. It's not a certain niche for a certain, like, it's not a niche name to the point that people won't understand what it's about. So that's why I also put natural 20 gaming goods, or the gaming goods side of it, because the downside of it is that a lot of people are systematic and methodical like me. They're also thinking of branding whatever they have as natural 20, because natural 20 is, let's admit it, it's a good name. So gaming goods is my effort of um, establishing that I'm a merchant of gaming paraphernalia. So that's my thought process.
Okay, it's because both of you made this then with the idea of diversity and universality. So in a way, I wouldn't be surprised if in 2 years' time we're going to have like nerdy chipmunk glasses or natural 20 skincare. I mean, that's essentially what's going to happen at
um,
this.
there might be like natural 20 realty or natural 20 medical supplies, who knows? Like natural 20 therapeutic psychological clinic. Watch out for that in 4 to 5 years.
Okay, well, we'll see. Okay, and I think this brings us then to this notion of what exactly that you're selling. And I think this is what most people really wanted with this talk, which is how you actually make your products.
Mhm.
I think lots of people they will watch the YouTube video, but
Mhm.
the YouTube video will only say so much. And of course, YouTube videos are edited to not show the trial and error. So, so,
Those
so
noises.
right, like we have heard, like I've seen the crochet videos where that's too perfect. How many times did you undo that knot? And
Yeah.
of course, all bubbles and dice. Like people don't tell you about what actually happens when things F up. So let's actually talk about how your products come to be. So what your materials are, what your production process is, and here's another rather potentially spicy topic. How do you price the stuff? Because
Um,
you're clearly not just,
yeah.
selling things on the basis of your materials. You also have to give yourself proper compensation. So how do you then measure the value of your labor and your work? So let's get into that. Like with materials, like how do you actually know? Okay, so let's assume you've already made the idea. Like I have these skills. I can make dice, I can crochet like a wizard. What then is the first thing? Like in terms of materials, like what do we then do, assuming you have your skill set?
Well, I'll let you start, Elisa. I'll let you
Oh,
start.
because I was gonna say I'll let you start, Andy, but sure, I'll start. So as you all know, I wasn't a hobbyist for dice making because back in 2018 that was new. Like when I started, I could only count with all of my fingers and probably with my toes the international dice makers at the scene. But now there are thousands because we do have like a 21,000 strong dice making community, or was it 16,000? I forget. So right now in 2020, like all the information about dice making is there in the Facebook group and in the Reddit. People are gonna say, "Oh, this brand works. This silicone mold works. This method works." But at the time when I started, no one was sharing information. Like I had to figure out everything by myself or to source things. But as I said, I was a crafty person, and at the time I had some a few thousand pesos, right? And I wanted to experiment a bit with the materials that were accessible to me. And when I say accessible, I could order online and it would come to me like in a few days, or something I could go to pre-pandemic and go to the store and buy this and that. So at that time, the first consideration was what was accessible and affordable, because at that time I wasn't sure of the returns. I didn't want to spend on materials that were expensive because there are um, um, more known resin suppliers that would probably cost in the probably $100 per liter price. But then here in the Philippines, I know a supplier that would only sell a liter of resin for, sorry, I'm computing my in my head, like um $35. So I think for you have to scale up your materials to your skill level and your revenue level. So, if you don't have any sales first, or if you just want to play with your product and see what techniques that you want to explore and discover, go with the cheaper options. But if you're more confident in yourself and your skills, and if you're more confident in your market and your revenue, go ahead. Go spend for the more expensive materials. Does that answer the question?
Well, I think it's more like, so it seems to me like your first step is know the craft, even if
Yes.
you're not that good. So when would you say you're ready to start? When are you saying, okay, I'm good enough to start selling my stuff? I think that's one question
Okay.
people
I
have.
see. Okay, thank you. Because I have to admit, I started selling right off the bat when I had a physical dye product. Like it wasn't the best. Like I had no benchmarks of what the best looked like because I was the only one doing it at the time. So um uh I'm thinking of an example. So there are people who bought back in 2018 my first versions of the dice, and they're rounded. So that was my first iteration. And then when I got to learn more through experimentation, I leveled up. So I continued selling. And the people who bought the first versions bought the second versions. And then I made my own dice font. And then I remade the third version. So people who bought the first and the third version are still buying the first people who bought the first and the second version are still buying the third version. So I feel like it's also a lesson in retaining your customer base and being like super close to your community and retaining that community because when you do retain a community and develop a community, people will just keep on buying whatever version that you release. So that is my experience.
So, not to be reductionist, it sounds like the advice is know the craft, find the means, Reddit and YouTube are out there, experiment by starting cheap. Would you
Yes.
agree with that?
Yes,
Okay,
like
so
Yeah.
personally, yes.
Andy, would you say that's how you started off? Like when you began, it's like start cheap. If you're
I
gonna mess up, you're not gonna regret a mistake.
Yeah, I would say yeah.
Yeah.
Although yarn hoarding is a thing, you see so many colors like at the cart, at the cart, at the cart. Um, but yeah, my mom taught me, my late mom taught me how to crochet, and she never used any of those fancy crochet hooks that can run for 10, 20, $30. She used like 30 cents crochet hooks. So that is what I used, and I was pretty happy. I'm pretty lucky that the ergonomics, even though they're cheap, just aluminum hooks, it doesn't hurt my hand ergonomics. So I was able to use it. Some people had to switch to the hooks with the silicone handle because it hurts their hands and their wrist. I don't have that issue, so I'm pretty lucky in that regard. What I did find out was sometimes the hook would snag, and that is something that never bothered me before. It wasn't enough to destroy the yarn, just enough to, stop the progress of crocheting. But when people started asking, hey, can you do this dice pack for me, or can I commission? And I started doing dice packs for giveaways. I started realizing, I'm curious now. What's the difference between they all shape the same, the hook part, and you know, there's one reviewer on YouTube who said this one doesn't smack, and that caught my attention. That hook costs about $8 a hook, and like Eliza said, don't go gung ho and start, go get all the top gear. I bought just one of the hooks, just one measurement to try it out as a because each crochet hook, each people's hands are different, and it didn't snag. And I suddenly realized I could crochet so much faster because I wasn't stopping and going. And I realized, well, if I'm gonna be doing this for commission for the long term, that would cut down the time frame it takes for me to crochet a dice bag. Then it's worth the cost because it would cut the time, the labor time. And that's when I started, upgrading to my crochet hooks, uh, and also always waiting for online sales. Like, oh, there's a sale, and I grab one. Oh, there's another sale, and I grab another one. And now I have the a wide variety of measurements. But yeah, start cheap. And also because of this, if you start as a hobby, when you buy the gears, you upgrade your gears, even if you don't run it as a business anymore, you still get something out of it because you're doing it as a hobby. But if you're running it as a business like Eliza is, and you still are running it as a business, not as a hobby, then you have to take into account when you no longer run it as a business, what do you do with all the gears? So don't go overboard and buy everything just because. Try something out. What works for others might not work for you. Um, yeah, that.
Okay. So it sounds like in gaming parlance, some gear has a level requirement. So
Yes,
don't
that's
don't
a good analogy.
so like some gear has a level requirement. Be honest about your level
Mhm.
so that you can maximize the materials that you can
Yes.
afford.
Yep.
Okay, so there's some pretty good advice, which means after you go through all of these iterations, production now happens. So, how does production normally work for you? Like, I think you have a limit on your commissions per month. You don't, because you're solo powered, right? You don't. It's not like you have staffs or a factory or anything like that.
Yeah. Some I'm not, like sometimes I'm at an internal conflict of whether or not I want to admit this, but I'm a lone wolf in terms of running Lacto 20. But I do have the occasional help, especially um with the 3D printing of my inclusions. But other than that, from the arrangement of the pre-orders to the marketing to the making of the dice to post processing and shipping out, that is all me.
Okay, Eliza, this might be the time for your refresh.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm sorry, everyone. So, as we said earlier, this is not Eliza hating us. It's simply that.
I'm gonna. Oh, dang it! I was gonna take her spot just to tease her. But she's
There we
back
go.
already.
All right. So, to sum up what Eliza was saying, Eliza or
hello, I'm back.
Eliza, I'm sorry,
I'm back.
was saying that she doesn't actually depend on anyone other than her 3D inclusions. So, all marketing, all designing,
Yes.
and all sourcing of materials are hers. So, this limits you to how many sets a month?
Um, gosh, gosh darn it. Like my ceiling quantity per month is 40, but if I'm feeling rather manic that month, I would probably go up to 45. But that is my upper limit because I do this to maintain my sanity because I also do full-time studies as well.
How about you, Andy? Like, how do you determine, okay, I can keep on chugging along. I need to.
I I think one factor is that I also work full time as a freelancer and you know later on as something else. Um, and so I that's another thing actually that I want to point out for those who are looking into switching their hobby into a business. Keep a journal. Keep track of how long it takes for you to do sections of it of your craft. For example, for dice making, maybe if you're just starting, keep track. It takes me this long to work on a silicone until I'm satisfied with it. Or with crochet, it takes me this long to finish it up to this row or up to this diameter of the dice bag, because that helps you in the future to figure out how long in reality it takes. Because in theory doesn't take into account you stopping for lunch. It doesn't take into account you taking a rest because your wrist is starting to hurt or because you need to take a break. And having that real time frame it takes to make a dice bag or whatever product you have, that helps you calculate your labor cost later on into the pricing. Because if you think in theory and you say, oh, I can finish this, cramming in 8 hours, and you price it with 8 hours of work. But in reality, it ends up taking you 12, 14 hours because of an error. And then you have to do everything. In crocheting, it's called frogging because you rip the yarn, rip it. So when you have to frog everything and then start again, that takes time. That's undoing every work. So you have to take into account that. I would say working full time, I could probably make 2, 3 dice bags a month, but that's the dice pack that opens up at the dice tray earlier. That's what I calculated. If pushed and I have like I'm on vacation or whatever, that takes about 1 or 2 days full time to finish. Um, the thing is with crocheting, you have to know your craft as well because each craft has their own limitations and advantages. The limitations of crocheting is that it's very tedious. There's no shortcut. You cannot. You have to manually do the hook one by one. Some craft you can, once you have a mold, you can have 3 molds. You can have 3 sets all at one go. Crocheting, there's no way you can do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because this is where we're talking about work, right? And
Mhm.
this is where we go into something very spicy. which is how do we price?
Ah, yes.
So, for context, for many people in the RPGC, there is an accusation that you're underpricing
Right.
compared to people who are in the developed world. And of course, this brings in the whole argument of our clientele cannot afford the prices you're asking us to produce for them.
Mhm.
So, how then do you properly price? Because it's really such a big like question for many people. And based on your descriptions, you're talking like 16 hours, 20 hours a week. That's a part-time job basically outside of your regular work. So how do you then price your your products, your goods?
Huh. Where do we start, Andy? Where do we start?
Um,
Um, so I think it's safe to say that whatever you spend as your capital, you should regain. Like I feel like that's basic business things.
mhm.
But other than that, like you have to recoup your expenses. So that's a basic thing. But in terms of how high to price it, I think this is where Andy and I spent a long time talking about when we were preparing for this.
Yep.
Um, so I just want to say that pricing your craft because you are the person making the craft, you alone know your skill level, you alone know the nuances of your environment and how that will affect your work, your time. I will say that like pricing is inherently contextual and personal. It's deeply personal. Um, you are the lone person that can decide what is the right pricing
Yep.
for you and your product. Like you can allow people to to suggest to you the rationales of why you should price higher or lower, but at the end of the day, it is you um, with the executive decision to price,
Okay, let's get
right?
spicy here, all right? Have you ever seen a
Okay.
product? Have you ever seen a product in the go and you thought, oh my god, that thing is terrible, and oh my god, they are charging more than me, and oh, excuse me, and then do you ever feel like then I should be charging more? If people are willing to pay that much for crap, then I should be charging more. But does that? But do you ever find yourself like going like, oh, I can't do that? That's it. Does it ever feel wrong to you to do that?
I don't. Here's what my 14 years being a freelancer come into play. As mentioned earlier, I run CaLa for ASEAN creators and Pasar Seni for Indonesian creators. And one of the things that I keep seeing is people pricing their pricing too low. According to me, personally, I think they're pricing too low based on their skill levels and whatnot. Um, I don't have that issue because being a freelancer for 14 years, I'm very comfortable with okay, this is my skill set, this is how much it's the value is. Um, and when I say skill set, it doesn't necessarily mean the technical skill set itself. It's also the non tangible skills. My skill is in thinking outside the box, like thinking of like the Totoro modding and then the Baby Yoda modding. I'm really good at modding stuff, and that's another skill set in itself. There might be others who are really good at making complicated patterns that I cannot, but their skill levels in modding might not be as good as me. So know your the value of skill sets. The other thing is the so no, I to answer your question, no, I don't. I'm never so like, oh, that's I shouldn't have paid that much. What I've often encountered is people making stuff and then pricing it for way low, and I think you should have priced it so much higher because what people are doing, I noticed there's this rule like a guide that it's a common guide. It's like price your items 3 times the material cost. But the thing is, like Eliza was saying earlier, it doesn't take into account labor. It doesn't take into account overhead costs. And overhead costs include if you're making this your livelihood. insurance, because each craft has their own physical risk. Like Eliza has to wear the PPE. Crocheters could develop carpal tunnel syndrome. You have to take that into account. Insurance, and as simple as when you buy materials, when you go to the store, you pay for transportation. You pay for when you go ship it to the post office. You go to the post office, you're spending money on gas. You have to take that into account. Um, Labor as well, and I think people often forget that. So yeah, it frustrates me to see people at the skill level that they have, and don't forget
Mm-hmm.
that custom work is much more expensive in value, because one, it cannot be made in advance. You cannot. It's not a ready stock thing, because so you cannot do it while you have time. You have to do it by order. And also, if it's an original design, the time it takes to get to the final product, it's not just, you have to make several prototypes before you get a product that works. And the time that it takes to make all those prototypes, you have to take that into account. And I think that's why custom work is that much more expensive compared
Have
to.
have either of you though, for example, faced resentment that you're
Oh yeah.
charging too low? Because that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Like you say they're
Okay.
charging too low, but then suddenly it's like, okay, but now
Um,
you're charging too low
definitely.
for another market as opposed to your own market.
Definitely. Okay, I would love to talk about this. Because I am a crafter that caters to the international crowd. So, I feel like as a Southeast Asian, I want to put a historical context and a sociological context to running a business, and at the same time being fair to yourself and to your clients, especially if you are selling in an international scale. Because it's going to be contextual, region per region. For example, um, people sell American dice makers or Westerner or European dice makers. They are saying that dice should never go below $50, right? But what about those living in countries with a lower cost of living? Because sometimes $50 is 2 weeks of food. And there are gamers who live on that kind of financial situation. I want my dice to get to them too. So what I do, especially for the Filipinos, for the Filipino context, yes, I keep in mind that ideally on an international scale, this should be my pricing. I will follow that, but because that is also fair for me. But on the local Filipino context, I give Filipinos a discount because they deserve the same kind of dice that international customers deserve. And at the same time, I was going into this with Andie, not only for crafters, but also for artists
Yeah.
as well who do illustrations and do other artwork. I feel that my observation is that Southeast Asians, Andie prefers to call this as, what do you prefer to call it? Um,
Bias.
Internal bias,
Yeah,
but I prefer
racial
to call
racial
it as,
bias.
right. I prefer to call it as internalized racism. And I don't blame us for having that kind of belief that I'm a person from a developing world. I should price lower. Like there's this subconscious belief that we should price lower than what is recommended on the international scale. Because if we dig deeper, one of the factors that affect that kind of thinking is that it might relate to our history of being colonized, our history of being told as persons in developing countries that we are not good enough for the international scale, right? So that has been ingrained with us. And then now that we're generations past colonialism, we're still thinking in such a way that we are only second class crafters and merchants, but we're not. Like, for example, in Natural 20, I don't know any other dice maker that is making 3D landscapes, hand painting them and putting them in dice. I don't see that. So I think that if you know your worth, if you know your worth regardless of your race, regardless of your region, if you had an opportunity to price your ideal and sell to international, and
Mhm.
people complain about that on the international scale, do not bend backwards for them because you know your worth and you know the worth of your locality, and at the same time it is up to you to see where you can compromise or um, make negotiations on how you can bring your dice to a cheaper or for a lower price in your locale. So that's been my experience with dice.
Okay.
There's
So
there,
I mean, like, I again, like, now again, I have to, like, put on my moderator hat because you do want to cover things. Now,
Yeah, like
like, because this is the
I'm
spiciest,
sorry.
but this is the spiciest thing, right?
I
Like, let's
want
be
to say
real.
more, Mahar.
But let's be real.
But
This is the biggest thing, honestly, because when you get down to it, you can know all these things, but when it comes to talk of money, I think we are naturally more uncomfortable with it, and we have to bring that
Mhm.
out there. So thank you for actually
Right.
sharing that.
that that's
Oh, can I
actually
add?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Okay,
actually
go Andy, go Andy.
that was actually one of the point that we talked about during our preparation thing. Aside from the racial bias, there's also this cultural. It's like you were saying, Mahar. As Asians, we are. It's culturally rude to mention price. It's culturally rude to be confident about your work in the sense of this is what I do. This is what I'm good at. We are taught from young that you have to be humble. You have to be you have
I
to
think
do
that's more, I wouldn't say all Asians,
no,
but
not
like,
all.
but
Yeah.
it's a common enough thread in many Southeast Asian cultures where, like, you're arrogant if you're proud of your work,
Yeah. I think
and that's a problem.
thank you for the correction. Not all Asians. Not all
Yeah,
Asians.
but I think enough that it's one of those painful stereotypes. To quote, what's her name, Chimamanda Adichie, it's not that stereotypes aren't true; it's that stereotypes are incomplete.
Yes.
So that is one piece of information that is true, but it's not the whole picture. But unfortunately, okay, now I need to moderate myself. Okay,
Mahar, it is our turn to
it's your
moderate
turn to
now.
moderate me. So now, of course, you have all of these logistical things.
Mhm.
So, okay, this is where discussions of thirst begin,
Yeah.
because you now market yourself,
Mhm.
and like, I know that early in Eliza's career,
I like
you-
how you refer it to career. I
Yeah.
love it.
well, like, like, when you began burgeoning with dice, it's when people started. I don't want to say harass you, but they were low key.
I can
Um,
see why. I can see
They
why.
were
Yes.
they were low key, like, doing
No, Mahar, you don't need
everything
to mince words,
to
Mahar.
get,
Like you can tell it as it
but they
is.
weren't threatening you, but they were making true
No, I
nuisances of
know.
themselves to get your dice.
Right.
And I think that might be the success of your marketing. So how did you put yourselves out there?
Can I add some context to that,
Mhm.
Mahar?
Sure, sure, go.
Um, so back in 2018, right? Just less than 20, less than 15 dice makers. So a person from a Western country got a hold of me and my dice. And at the time, they were asking, do you sell dice to the US? But now I do. But at that time, I wasn't prepared to ship to any other country because I was still getting the hang of dice making. So I was like, oh no, I'm not open to international orders just yet, but it's in the cards. So just follow our page and stay tuned for when we order for when we accept international orders. But she didn't stop there. They didn't stop there. They joined Philippine gaming groups and was asking for me. Like, where's Natural 20? Where's Natural 20? And then they were to the point that they were finding my immediate friends and asking for me. So yeah, context. How
Sorry,
is she?
I don't
Oh,
know what was going on with this person, but I think, like, again, the waves of marketing. really
Yeah.
show, like, I mean, like, both of you, like, you have these intricate pieces. um they're almost always shot in natural light. They look
Mm.
like they deserve on they it looks like they deserve their own Instagram spreads. So
Like like the pictures are like morning after shots, right? That's
right,
how
right,
good they
right,
are.
they're very, like, thirsty. They're thirsty inducing dice. It's like, I bought these dice, no, light a cigarette. So, like, how do you decide to market your work? And,
Mhm.
like, again, this brings it back to your identity as, like, designers, as makers, as crafters. Like,
Right.
how would you decide? How do you say, okay, like, Eliza, did you decide to go, you know what, I'm going to make you thirsty for my dice. I'm going to make you want to think of, like, this is the dice for you. This is the dice that ends up on my finger. Like, how do you do that? As a ring,
That's
okay, that kind of thing. Like,
That's exactly it, Mahar. I feel like I do have an advantage as a nurse and as a student of psychology because I think I'd like to know how people work and how people function and think. So I take that into my advantage. And one of the buttons that I like to push with potential customers is that um, people want they have an inherent feeling of ownership, right?
Yeah.
Like people want to call something their own. People want their own car, their own house, their own soulmate, their own lover that they can call their own. And a dice set is no different than that, right? So and gamers dice sets but not for all games. For most games are an inherent are an imperative tool. It's synonymous to being needed in the gaming table. It is symbolic, right? It is a symbol of our community. So for you to take ownership of that symbol and that symbol representing your personal aesthetic as a customer or your favorite character or your character is one of my selling points is that I am the person to do that for you, and that is a dice set that is uniquely yours.
Andy, would you say this also comes from the fact that you commission the stuff? You're making things that people ask you to make because they want it. Is that also true for your branding?
I would say, yeah. I think in my case, it's it's slightly different from Elisa's case in that sense that going back to the I this is not my main livelihood, so I have the advantage of not having the pressure to be on social media marketing and all that kind of stuff. It can happen naturally. It's more organic. It doesn't have to be all out. um, we were talking about social media presence, and I don't do social media. Instagram is not pretty. Instagram is just photos, and but still the joy of doing something custom, the joy of working with a client, that comes across when you post on the server, when you say, hey, I made this, someone asked me to do this and I managed to work around it and to make it happen. That joy comes across, and I think that's very infectious. It's very it gets people excited, even the ones who are not looking to get dice packs. They're excited about the dice packs, and that again, that sense of joy, that sense of camaraderie is spreads. And so I would get people asking me, even if the project doesn't work out for for financial reasons or whatever, we still have fun discussing about the possibility of doing things. And I like with Eliza said that she can make things happen, for like make it very character specific. It's uniquely yours. I think my strength is in people have an idea, but they don't have the skill sets, or they don't know how to work around it to make it happen, and I can bring it to them. I can make it a reality. Like somebody else is asking, "Hey, I saw your dice bag. I saw the compartments, but I want it. space exactly this way, and instead of what you already made. Is it possible to do that? And it is possible. And I told her, yeah, yeah, it's totally doable. I can do that. So it's, in that sense, it's the clients and I are working together to solve a problem. And again, that back and forth, um, that's the best part. That's the best part of working on it. And showing them the work in progress and them seeing it. Like the Totoro bag, my DM with the client, it's basically all caps. We were like going, I was like, look at it, it's so squishy. Oh my god, it's like all caps because we're both excited. It's not just the client. I'm excited too. And I think it comes across. It's
Mhm.
very infectious.
So now you're all both well on your way.
Mhm.
You're getting known for this. You're organizing communities now to get these commissions out there. How do you keep at it? How do you keep the ball rolling? How do you sustain yourselves? Let's keep in mind as well that unfortunately we've had to deal with, this thing called 2020. So how do we how do we then continue on doing this kind of stuff? Especially since, and I hate to say this, there have been people, I don't want to say plagiarizing the work, but are very much like looking at the trends you set with the intent on capitalizing on a trend that you might have started but now won't necessarily won't necessarily profit out of or get returns from.
I think that's the risk of any business. You start with an idea, and then people start copying it. With well, going back to to part of the question, sustainability. In my case, because the dice spec that I made is very much, we're working together with the client to solve the problem. It's, there's no time set. It's not like, except for the dice tray thing, which it's already sort of, I have the pattern streamlined. But for custom amigurumi mods, it's an ongoing thing, so I don't have that time pressure per se. And also because lockdown, pandemic, people are in a rush to get it physically because they cannot show it off to their other gaming friends as anyway. They cannot play offline, so that in a way has worked in my favor. In terms of plagiarism and ideas, there's a reason I never posted the dice spec dice tray with the compartments in the in any of the crochet servers, because crocheters are very skilled. You
They're
can
going to
hit.
reverse engineer.
I reverse engineering is a thing, and you
They're going to
can
reverse
literally,
engineer.
yeah, you can definitely reverse engineer just basically looking at the stitches. And that is an idea that I do not want to release to the crocheting world per se. The dice tray, dice pack without the compartments, some people have done that to different specifications than mine. But the compartment is something I've never seen before. It's usually shaped in a way that becomes really bulky, and it doesn't, when you open it as a dice tray, it doesn't work as neatly. Um, I'm trying to write a pattern for it, and once I have a pattern written down and I can link people to the pattern, then I'm gonna release it. That would protect me in the sense of people know, oh, it's her idea. She already has the pattern for it.
Is the
So yeah,
crochet world like that? You have to like stamp your like this is mine. I did these are my hooks. Like is that how that works or
not as hostile as that. But people do need to put in their, please credit this. There's like all my amigurumi mods. I always credit the original artist who made the pattern, because people do make it. You follow the pattern, and then you sell it. Some crocheters are okay with people selling the resulting items. Some are not. Some are, say, just for personal use. So that is the thing. But I think for me, it's I guess it has to, it plays a little bit into the ego. I have to admit. Um, it's not necessarily that I don't make profit off of it. it's that I want to be recognized for the idea of the design.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
yeah, so even if I release the pattern for free, I don't mind. I use free patterns all the time, and it makes me happy. I learn from other projects, like different ways of working around things, and different techniques. So to me, it's not necessarily the monetary value; it's the credit that I want to retain.
The recognition that
The
you made
recognition,
this,
yeah,
that
yeah,
you contributed.
yeah.
Elise,
That
but
has
how about?
value.
Oh, I'm sorry. And Eliza, how about you? Because you're doing this. I don't know how you're doing this.
I don't
Because
know either,
because
Mahar.
you have a you're full time MA.
Yes.
So how do you manage that? Like full time MA, Dice Smith,
Right.
you know, like
Right. Okay. I'm going to get into it. Also talking about mental health because if your mental health is down, your business is down. So I want to talk about the three things in order: sustainability, mental health as a crafter, businessman, businesswoman, business person, and then intellectual property because I will forget the order. So in terms of sustainability, like I've been at this for 2 years, and in the first year, I felt my ceiling because my model my business model for the first year was I'm gonna make designs, pre-designed dice that are made to order. You just tell me what design you want, I'll make it. It'll get to you in a month. That was it. But when you stop putting out designs, little by little, people are gonna buy those designs. Their thirst for those designs are satiated. They won't be buying. So you're gonna hit a wall, right? Because people are satisfied. Their hunger is satisfied. So I've evolved from that to focusing on custom because characters are being generated on the monthly. New people have 5 games like in concurrence with each other. They're always gonna have that idea that I'm gonna make dice for my character. I love her so much. I'm gonna make a dice that is in her aesthetic. Or I like this anime and I like this anime character and I'm gonna commission a dice set of whatever aesthetic. Like people have the weirdest ideas. So that keeps my business sustainable because people have ideas. I'm going to feed off those ideas. And I don't rely in the confines of my brain. I also rely in everyone's ideas because that is my sustainable model. Is that I am a person with limited ideas, but if I work on everyone's ideas and just be a tool for the production of their ideas, I'm not gonna run out of business and I'm not gonna run out of orders. So actually, right during this panel, 3 people are messaging me for orders, but
See, I told you. I
we'll
told you.
okay.
wait long.
All right.
And then
Mhm,
the next thing is sustainability, right?
mhm.
So I'm gonna admit this. I struggle with an affect disorder. Um, I've been struggling with it. I'm not struggling with it, but it's just like an annoying thing that comes and goes like every month. It's fine. But there comes a point that you get so burnt out. Like there was a time I was doing dice. Oh my god, that month I made 73 dice sets.
Holy
I
hell.
was so burnt out after. So the good thing with managing your own business is that when you feel like you're getting burnt out, you can say, I'm closing for next month. If you don't give me this break, there will be no one to make your custom dice. So you are at my mercy if ever I will be having a break or not. So just wait for me, y'all. Like I can take your orders, but I'm gonna make them next month. So
Oh,
people are like, okay, we'll wait for you because we're willing to wait for you, and that's the nicest thing people have told me. I do
Yeah.
have this I tell people I will have 2 months of mental health self care time so that when I'm back I can make you dice that are in the ideal quality made that I want them to.
that's cool.
Oops,
It's a seasonal
sorry
business.
I had
It's cool.
to.
So before we
Um,
move on to, I'm sorry because we're almost done with time, unfortunately.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Okay,
but we covered the majority of your
I
list,
can't
I think.
believe it's
All right.
done.
So, but just a few things, like just a big takeaway that I hopefully wrote this all down.
Okay.
Just like number one, know your craft, learn it, start cheap. Number two, know your capacity,
Yep.
take track, journal what you've made, and know what you can make. Three, pricing is personal.
Mhm.
Four, your health is your business's health. So,
Yep.
however you
Yeah.
take yourself out there, just keep that in mind.
Yep.
Okay, so before we ask the obvious question of what's next, again, we're here on Twitch and we are here in our online auditorium. And if anyone wants to like ask a question, go right away. You can message me or you can take over this mic stand. I think I'm going to move over to the auditorium. And then yeah, and then we'd love to know what's next for both of you.
I think
Andy.
there's a point that a tip I guess I wanna give others who are starting about sustainability. Again, look at your craft. What diversify? Like crochet. If I write a pattern, that's a way for me to earn a passive income without actually having to crochet things. And like Eliza might be able to provide workshops. Or something of similar nature. Think outside the box of don't just be constrained by the physical technicalities of your craft, but think of the peripheral things that you can do passively outside of it. That would help you keep you sustainable too as well. A lot of crocheters they write patterns, they sell patterns. So that's one thing that can be done.
Hey there. Question for me. Hi, my name's Steve. Um,
Hi,
I,
Steve.
Eliza, I really appreciated your take on burnout and whatnot.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask, have you ever gotten any pushback from saying, I need to take a break to really make sure that I'm capable of continuing the work that I've committed to? And
Um,
how do you respond
mhm.
to that pushback if you get it?
I'm lucky enough that I've never had any pushback for it because if they do push me back and burn me out, then that means no more dice for them. And I think they understand that. But if ever that I do have any pushback, um, it tells me that it's a customer that doesn't respect my boundaries. And my personal principle as a shop is that um, I have the privilege of choosing who I work with and who I sell dice to. So I've said this before through my site that if I know that you are a documented harasser in the community, an abuser, or someone who is harmful in the community, I will not entertain any of your orders. I will not associate with you. So I do have that standpoint. And so far, it hasn't brought my business and my hobby and my craft any negative light.
Okay. Thank you, Steve, for the question. Also, I'm
Thank
glad
you.
that you're
Thank you
still
so much.
here at 3 in the morning.
Where are you from, Steve?
It's only 2:50 a.m.
That's fine.
Uh,
It's still pretty early. Like that's not so late. I mean, it's pretty early. Come on. Like I'm
Okay.
super happy you're here, Steve.
Here's another question, also sent to me personally, which is how do you manage backlog of orders and delays in production?
Communication.
And would you like to take that while I cry? Oh, Mahar is
Communication.
done. Okay, Mahar is
Yeah. I would say dealing with backlogs and delays is all communication. The Totoro back, that's taken me months. Uh, Modding Totoro itself, that took a few weeks. And thankfully the client is okay with it. He he understands that the thing about amigurumi mods and specific characters is you cannot shape it differently because they have very specific shapes, very specific characteristics you have to adhere to as much as possible. And the leaf, I have frogged it for, I don't know, like 4 or 5 times already because it didn't fit the leaf exactly as I wanted it to be. But I communicated it to the client, and luckily he's okay with it because he wanted it to be just perfect. So the key is communication, in short.
Do you think that also might come from the fact that it's also a testament to quality, maybe, where they know it's hard to make, so they're willing to wait?
Yeah, I would say yeah. I've been pretty lucky about that. That he understood that it's not a quick done deal.
Mhm.
It it takes, like you were saying, it takes time to build that product, make
This
that product.
actually brings us to another question, which is also sent to me, which is that why haven't you expanded your businesses? Like, why haven't you found a factory or trained people to do what you do?
I think for me personally, it's because it's still mainly a hobby passion to generate some extra income. If it ever becomes a true and true business, then yes, maybe I would train people to crochet and stuff. But to me, that I would be very happy to provide job opportunities for others. But at the same time, the main joy of it is communicating with the clients, figuring out how to make their ideas a reality. And if I run it, if I expand it that way, it becomes too mechanical for me. That's for me personally. I mean, for others, it might work differently.
Eliza?
Okay. For the backlogs, with the context that I'm the only one running Natural 20, I honestly like as a big contrast to what people see with Natural 20. Like I do have that feeling of um sometimes I get an imposter syndrome of sorts. I feel like I'm not good enough. Like, and that
Oh
factors
yeah.
into like the backlog. Like sometimes it's a bit paralyzing if you think that. And you spend days thinking of the design, how you'll do it, running it through your head, and then finally executing it. And when it's executed, oh, it turned out super well. And in terms of backlog, yes, I do agree with Andy that we have to notify our customers. So admittedly, I'm super late in notifying my customers, but what I do is that I do acknowledge that ordering through my shop and finalizing an order with me takes up a customer's time, emotional labor, mental labor, time and effort, bandwidth. So when I can, I give something compensatory like a discount or something free or whatever, right? Because I do recognize that because of my lateness in delivering, I might have spent someone's energy and effort and labor and emotional labor, right? And then answering the question of branching out and not necessarily automating or um, what is the word, or branching out into a bigger factory. I do recognize that in the dice making community, that is a burgeoning thing. People are setting up Kickstarters, outsourcing designs from China because China dice makers have marketed to me that they can make my dice design so I can sell them around the world. That is an option. But at the same time, I feel like Natural 20, which I have built as a personal, very personal brand, I lose a part of that personality of me, of my personality being a Natural 20 by outsourcing to a bigger factory and making a company out of it. And at the same time, I'm coming up with that decision because, as I've said earlier, yes, dice making is my passion, but in the long term, I want to be a clinical therapist specializing in therapeutic gaming. So at this point in time, Natural 20 for me is a means to an end and not necessarily an end. I'm not saying that I'm ending Natural 20, but maybe one day I can train people if I have to transition out of dice making.
So the last question of this panel is what's next? So what's next right now for Nudie Chipmunk and what's next right now for Natural 20?
Andy?
I
Hi.
if we're talking about what's next is I hope to work with more people modding amigurumis, getting, because that's that I love the creative process behind that. I also want to start tapping into writing patterns. Writing patterns is a different skill set altogether, which is something I'm still learning. But writing patterns and making custom character crochets, amigurumis. So let's say you have a gnome trickster cleric that you have, and then I would love to be able to have that skill level to be able to make custom amigurumis like for the characters.
Almost like crochet portraits, basically.
Yes, yes,
Mm,
that's a good analogy. That's a very good
mm.
analogy. Yeah, yeah, that's my dream.
Okay, and Natural 20.
Oh, before I proceed to my part, Andy, the future is Baby Yoda crochet
Yeah,
bags. That is the future. Um,
yeah,
for
yeah.
Natural 20, what is the future? It's so hard to say what is the future for a dice maker because you're making dice, like that is the future. But in terms of like what I'll be working at, what I want to really hone in Natural 20 is to maximize all of the customizability that I can deliver. And basically, I want more opportunities for collaboration.
Mm.
Like one of the reasons why I'm extending Natural 20 to the international sphere and starting off with this collaboration with our 15 game designers um, is that I want to be more involved with the gaming community, with the game design community, because I feel like if when I extend what I can do for the community. It's a synergistic thing. You empower me and I empower you. And that's such a good thing that I see no negative thing about. And guys, can I just is it okay if I plug the collaboration right
Go
now, Mahar?
plug, plug,
Go,
plug, plug,
go,
plug,
go.
Okay.
plug. It's what's next.
Okay, guys, if you haven't been listening, it's okay. The only important thing is that you listen to what I say next. So you guys know it's fine. Like I wouldn't listen to myself. It's okay. I get you. So what I really want to spotlight during this panel is the 15 collaborated sets with game designers. So I'm super forgetful, but some of the designers that I'm working it with is with Mahar right here, with Kiana S, with the Doug Taylor Pamponzalan, with Sin Posadas, with Erwin Kasha, with Dave from Project Spark Games, with Bubblegum Sam. I forget everyone, but they're on my site at what is my site? Nat20 Gaming Goods .card.co. You can get the link on my booth. Apologies if I may seem like a
Mention
dead
your
fish
boot
later.
number.
Oh, 33. There's a black dog there and the D20. So if you buy these designs, either Poly 7s or 10B whatever's, you get a free copy of their game or discount vouchers for their game. So when you are supporting my dice and buying my dice, you are also supporting these designers who deserve your attention more than my dice. So that is it. Okay, listening over. You can now stop listening if you want
Okay, so thank you so much. And for everyone in the auditorium, if you're here, let's do like show our appreciation. Let's like hit Z and dance around because
to.
super thank you. Really, and I hope a lot of
Oh,
people learned. I know I did from this particular
thank you
talk.
so
So
much.
One
yes,
plug, one
Andy,
last plug,
one
one last
last plug,
plug.
one last plug.
So you were asking what's next, right? For Nerdy Chipmunk. But what's next for CaLa is I really hope that it becomes the hub because I really want to showcase ASEAN creators and having them be in one hub makes them so much more accessible instead of scattered all around Twitter and whatnot, and it helps. I hope it becomes a vehicle for people to collaborate with each other,
Right.
like Eliza is doing now. Just and cross countries instead of just locally. So that's my hope. So visit my booth because the link to CaLa is in my card.
Okay, so again, thank you all so much. That was Let's Talk Shop, from crafting hobby to geeky businesses. I think Andie and Eliza, I keep on saying both
You
pronunciations.
can call me beautiful, Mahar.
Okay, wonderful person. Hi. Okay, we can do let's and yeah, they're going to be at their booths. And again, thank you. And we're
Thank you,
continuing
Mahar.
on with session 0.
You've
Thank
been
you.
wonderful,
Thank you,
Mahar. Thank you, and
everyone.
Mark as
Thank you,
well.
Mahar.
Mark,
And Mark and everyone.
thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we
Bye.
step off the stage
I,
now? Like, tell us.
I think we do.
Is the stream over? Do I stop
Oh,
waving?
hold on. Take a screenshot. Take a screenshot first.
I will take a screenshot.
Take a screenshot.
Okay, screenshot taken.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, I can go lie down now. Okay, we're not streaming anymore, right, Mark?